Welcome and thank you for joining today's Elevate and Empower event. My name is Elizabeth Pravat, your technical producer for today's event. If you run into any issues during the presentation, please use Microsoft Teams to contact me. Uh, please use the thumbs up reaction to let me know that I'm coming through loud and clear. Perfect. Thank you so much. The Elevate and Empower series is a spotlight on leadership and learning, which aims to enhance the skills and knowledge of the Veterans Benefits Administration's leaders and aspiring leaders at various grade levels through monthly training sessions. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping notes. Today's event is being recorded. And please note that your microphone and cameras have been disabled by default when you logged in. However, we highly encourage your participation through the chat, through the use of reactions, and we have a few poll questions as well. If you do have any questions throughout the event, we will either answer those on the spot or collect them for the end, depending upon the time constraints, but we will get to those questions. Live captioning has been enabled through Teams. To access this, you can click on the More Actions button, which is the three dots at the top of the screen, then click on Language and Speech, select Turn on Live Captions, select English, and click on Confirm. Finally, your feedback is very important to us. So at the conclusion of the event, I will send a brief link out to collect your feedback, and we would love to hear what you think about today's event. At this time, I would like to introduce our speaker, Mr. Jerry Britt, Program Specialist with the Training Administration and Consulting Division of the Office of Human Capital Services. Mr. Britt, we are honored that you're here with us today, and I'm handing the floor over to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that introduction. Welcome, everybody. I'm Jerry Britt, and I'm here to talk about foundations of emotional intelligence. Now, I know there's often a lot of buzzwords being thrown around the office and around the work setting, and it's also concepts, and emotional intelligence is no exception to that concept. You may have heard leaders speak about the need for better EI or EQ, as it is sometimes called. But often, the conversation stops there. Today is your opportunity to dive into the subject, get more detailed understanding of what emotional intelligence consists of and how it relates to your performance or how it relates to also your own skills and crucial elements too. Daniel Goleman, who has written several books on the topic, defines emotional intelligence as a set of skills that enables us to understand emotions, what they are, what they mean, and how they can affect others. In his book titled Leadership, The Power of Emotional Intelligence, he cites several examples of gathering over 180 from 180 companies, gathering information and also performance reports. And then he realized that over 90% of the information he gathered from that information were highly rated performers were directly linked to emotional intelligent traits rather than cognitive abilities. With this level of importance on emotional intelligence, we should reflect upon that and then think how it can help us and help our teams. Here's what we're going to get into today. First, we're going to talk about gaining preliminary understanding of the concepts. Identifying your current level is what we're going to get to next. And then the last two, I'm going to leave up to you to create your own development plan and get insight from a coach or a mentor. We're also going to discuss how the brain works. And then we're going to dive into the 4 competencies of emotional intelligence. And also, we're going to talk about EI in the workplace. And at the end of this session, you should be able to apply these concepts and models in emotional intelligence to help you interact with others and to help bring some productivity or enhance productivity to your work center. And you're also going to be able to hopefully model positive behaviors to enhance team members' abilities and promote team effectiveness. So we're going to get right into an exercise. And before we get into this exercise, I want to give a story. And my story is somebody that I admired and somebody that I really, really set the foundation for my put for my people skills or my EQ. It was somebody that was very technical at the time. So about 24 years ago, I was in the United States military, and my section chief, I saw him walking around the grocery store. And while he was walking around the grocery store, I didn't think he knew my name because I was 2 levels below him, and I was trying to run away and hide from him in the grocery store so he didn't see me. And he caught up to me, and he caught up to myself and my wife. And he sat there and he said, "Hi, Jerry. How are you doing today?" Didn't even know he knew my first name because in the military we go by last rank and last name. And I was like, "Well, I'm doing fine today, sir." And then he introduced himself to my wife. And when he introduced himself to my wife, he goes, "What's your name?" She goes, "My name is Colleen." And then he says, "I am Scott Taggart and I work with your husband." He didn't say that your husband is 2 levels below me in this in my section. He actually said I worked with him. Now that type of people skills mixed with his technical skills sort of that made me want to work for him even harder because he didn't say, you know, he works for me. So as we think through this for the next to reflect upon either IQ or EQ, what I want you to think about is your Scotty Taggart, somebody that you admire. And then I want you to go into the hopefully the handout that you received, or write it down on a sheet of paper, and for about 1 minute, come up with skills or traits that you may think are good for people skills and some technical skills that you may think, and feel free to throw those in the chat as well. All right. Well, thank you very much for y'all throwing those in the chat. I see there's a couple of them that I think are really key. And when you're talking about people skills, is active listening. That is a essential people skills. And when we're talking about active listening, one of the great things about it is we have to remember to not listen to talk, but listen to understand. And that's one of the key things about a people skills uh, for active listening. And I saw empathy in there as well. I saw honesty, openness, and those are all great skills for people skills. And again, empathy is super important as when you talking to somebody. And I think that's what happened with me and when I was in that grocery store and Scotty Taggart talked, he was thinking about probably the time that he was in my shoes and somebody said they work for me, not with me. So I appreciate everybody sharing your thoughts into the chat. As you can understand, employees are more engaged at work when they believe that their immediate supervisor cares about them as people and not just as tools. Strong EQ can help you achieve this. There's so many benefits with EI. If you're thinking, well, I don't know if I can be like the person I admire, I have great news for you. EI isn't something that you were born with. It's something that's a learnable skill. That I started my journey almost 24 years ago when I met Scotty Taggart in that commissary or in that grocery store, and he said to me, "I work with you." And that is one of the key things that helped me start learning that I needed to learn my technical skills just as much as my people skills along the way. What this helped me do is not have a knee-jerk reaction. And we all get upset, we all get angry, and we all have those emotions that come through. But when I learned the people skills, I was able to slowly soften my mind, lower that anger level, and actually start talking to people and get to more productive levels. So one of the things that we also need to be aware of is we need to be aware of our physical reactions and our brain and how everything works to understand how EI can be helpful for us. Emotions are information, they're data, and we love data at the VA. Being able to understand the source of the data is a huge advantage in your exploration of emotional intelligence. At the most basic level of our process, we have our reptilian or survival brain. This function is regularly scanning our environment for danger. When triggered, it initiates a fight or flight response. This functions had true life or death consequences when we were escaping the path of a lion or running for something to try to get away to make sure that we're safe. But it doesn't have that same effect when we're stuck in traffic today and we get that fight or flight response mode, or when when a barista or somebody gets our order wrong and we go into that fight or flight response. It is important to be familiar with that reaction and how you feel. For me, my heart rate increases. I start getting tunnel vision and I feel heat coming over my body. And that's when I know that I'm in a fight or flight response. And it's important to recognize it and journal those times when you're in that fight or flight response. That way you can recognize in a moment when you like, I don't really need to be in a fight or flight response right now because somebody said something to me that I didn't like, or because I'm stuck in traffic. Moving up to the next layer is Olympic brain or the emotional brain. This layer searches for broad emotional categories and it allows us to connect and care for others on a basic level. This again was part of that survival as we grouped together in communities to try to stay alive and be in a primal state, and there's safeties in numbers, and this is part of that brain that moves with us when we want to be connecting with those around us. The next layer of the brain is the neocortex, our thinking brain. This is where we analyze logically and we make effective decisions. It can take accurate data and emotional data. And the thinking brain enables both IQ and our EQ, permitting more variety of reflection on feelings than the emotional brain can allow. And here's where we're going to get into our next fight or fight response that I touched on earlier. We're going to dive deeper into it. It's the amygdala, if you can amygdala hijack. And basically what happens is you your brain is triggered into an emotional response, and something is happening, and it hijacks and it shuts all other components of your brain down, so you're incapable of thinking logically or intelligently. And it's often done in high what our brain thinks in high risk situations, or when somebody makes a snide comment or a professional comment to us, we have a tendency to get frustrated and we fire right back. We send out an unprofessional email. For these reasons, it's helpful to become very, very familiar with when your brain goes into that fight or flight response. There are some journaling prompts that you could do in the handout, and I encourage you to do that and think about a time where you may have that fight or flight response, and think about how you can calm it down and reflect and move on from that fight or flight to get back to being productive. At a high level, emotional intelligence is the ability to use your emotions in a positive and constructive way in relationships with others. The matrix on the screen shows four categories that create emotional intelligence. Looking at the headings of the columns, we see they're divided into self and eternal facing and others or external facing. In the left column, we see the concentration of awareness and management. It is the intersection of these where the four areas of EI come into play. Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management. In the next segment, we will explore each of these four areas and discuss what it is. Consider where you are in each of these areas and explores ways that you can improve. Self-awareness, the ability to look inward and recognize your own strengths and weaknesses, what emotions you're experiencing, and how they affect you personally. An example of self-awareness for me is that I know that when I'm given a project, if I don't start creating milestones right there on the spot, I'm gonna procrastinate to where it's a week before the project's due or an hour before it's due, and I'm gonna have to get it to crunch time. I'm gonna get frustrated. I'm gonna get upset. I'm probably not gonna complete the project on time, and I'm probably gonna submit it subpar. Versus, I know that my self-awareness is I need to start as soon as somebody gives me the project. I need to start marking in my calendar, 2 days from now, put in the calendar, I got to start working on this project. That's one of the ways that your self-awareness of knowing, well, I can mitigate this and I can get this project done on time and to save myself so much frustration in the meantime. Additionally, one of the other things of self-awareness of somebody who's missing self-awareness is as a young supervisor in the military, I would ask for feedback on a project with my team, and then I would proceed to poke holes in everybody's ideas that gave me an idea. If you gave me an idea, I was like, oh, that's not that idea. I don't like that idea. Let's not talk about that. Let's go with my idea over here. And everybody that volunteered ideas, I sort of shot them down. What I realized is as I moved on in my career, I realized like that is not the way that we need to and encourage people and be self-aware. I need to remember that I'm not the one at closest to the problem. One's closest to the problem is the one who probably has the best idea, not my idea. So that's one of the things that I had to reflect upon in my own journey in EI and realize that I was missing some self-awareness. And once I realized that, once I realized that my team and the ideas and our products got better because we started listening more to each other and using that active listening that was mentioned in the chat earlier. So we've come to a point where our self-assessment. So if you want to pull up the handout that was provided, we're going to take about 2 minutes and feel free to go through and rate yourself with the self-assessment. Have about a minute left. If anybody has any realizations through self-assessment, please feel free to put those in the chat if you're willing to share. I've seen that too, where you're self-aware and just not inwardly confident. And we'll touch on that a little bit in our next with our next slide. Thank you everybody for sharing. So how can you improve on areas of self-awareness? Well, you can see here we have the wheel of emotions with colors, layers, and stuff that's relation with the colors, and it makes you be able to name emotions correctly. The more we get descriptive with our emotions, the better that we're able to recognize what we're feeling and then take the effective emotional action that we need. And one of the things that I would say is as you look at this will, if you're feeling rage, if you're feeling joy, name it out, name it, say it, because that sort of helps you understand what your reaction is at that time. You understand your body language at that time, and that again helps you to center yourself to take the effective emotional action that you need in order to get to better productivity. One of the ways to improve self-awareness is request honest feedback. So find somebody that you are comfortable with and ask them for feedback. Reflect on the gaps in your perception. Find somebody again that is probably a little bit different from you and ask what their perception is and try to help improve those blind spots that you may or may not have. And of course, journaling and looking for patterns. This is another key. I know a lot of us probably don't have enough time to journal. I know I don't. So one of the things that I do is there's this little neat feature on everybody's phone, and it's to record it. You can record your own voice. And as I record my own voice, sometimes it's me recording, saying that I was upset today, and this is why I was upset. And I listen, and I play it back, and I listen. Or I may say, like today, for example, I may say that, you know, I wasn't confident enough in my presentation. And I may say I'm not confident in my presentation today. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this effectively and to give people what they need. But I go right back and I listen to it and I go right back to that voice recording and I play it going, I am confident. I've done the practice I need. I reflect upon what I know the material. I presented before. I've got this. And when you play that back and you hear that in your head, that is how you can also improve too. And you can also understand what emotions you're saying because you're saying it right there. Saying I feel amazement, I feel surprised. You can say that right there into your phone, and you can also reflect upon tone and everything else. So it's a great way of improving. And journaling is great too, but this is also a great way of doing voice recordings. And of course, seek for opportunities for growth. That's another key as you go to try to improve and try to build your self-awareness is you want to seek opportunities to build upon your self-awareness, such as if you're not good at public speaking, take more public speaking uh, public speaking opportunities. Start small, and as you build up, and as you build your confidence, and as you journal, and as you get better, get big. Allow for larger and larger venues to give that opportunity. The ability to control your emotional reactions, self-control, enables us to channel any emotion in a productive way. So, for example, you may get angry, you may get upset, you may get frustrated, but your self-control says to you, take a pause, take a break, think about, let's cool off before we engage into our conversation that we need to. As you can see the picture on the screen, the gentleman up there is angry and he's yelling, and the woman there is upset. And I've known that I've been in this situation where somebody's come at me and has been yelling at me and upset with me, and that made me upset. And that person who did that did not have very good self management. And what that did is that created a high stress situation for everybody involved. It stifled productivity. So the way to improve that is to strategize a response with a trusted colleague. So again, find your mentor and try to figure out how you can improve on your self-management, your self-control. Review past performance. Again, that journaling is something that's key. As you go look back, you can think to yourself, did I have self-control in that moment? Let me listen to that. Let me listen to that voice recording on from last week to see if I had self-control and see what I said. And that helps out, and it helps you understand your past performance, and if there's something that you need to correct going forward. And of course, there's something we're going to get into a little bit later, and it's Stephen Covey's moment of choice. And that is a powerful moment that you can have a choice to decide how you're going to respond. One of the other things too I want to mention here, if for self-control, if you're angry at the moment, again, that voice recorder is something that's really good. If you ever record yourself when you're angry and you play it back later on when you're more calm, one of the things that does is it shows you what your tone is. It shows you how your speech pattern is. And what that can do is that can help you that when you do get more, when you do take the correct emotional action and you calm down, but you still may be feeling some of those residual anger, you when you hear that you play it back, you can think, okay, I need to make sure that I'm talking softer. I need to make sure I draw my tone out a little bit, or I need to quicken my tone to where I'm not sounding as I'm as angry as probably my emotions are reflecting. So again, here's another self-assessment as that we can go into for self-management. If you want to open up your or go back to your handout again and you fill this out, and we're going to take about 2 minutes to fill this out again. And then if you want to share, feel free to share into the chat. Thank you very much for sharing in the chat. And I think one of the things to remember here is this is one of the areas where we can improve. If you have a log, if you're journaling or you're using a voice recording, just and you have negative self-talk in there, replace it with more positive talk. So when you go there and you hear yourself and you hear those self-doubts, just replace it. And and that's sort of that will help you as you move forward, and it'll help improve your mood, and which also reduces any stress or frustration or anything you may have going forward. So the moment of choice from Stephen Covey. A moment of choice is a moment of truth. It's the testing point of character and competency. Understanding Covey's moment of choice will help you improve your self-control. Within our primitive brains, we are conditioned to respond in a particular way to a particular stimulus. We perceive a snide comment in a meeting that is a threat to our well-being, and we may respond by taking an unprofessional jab as an automatic response. But what if there is something between stimulus and response that held back our knee-jerk reaction? Stephen Covey in Seven Habits of Highly Effective People says between stimulus and response is our greatest power, the freedom to choose. And as you can see in this diagram is that you have stimulus, you have moment of choice and response. And what's key underneath moment of choice, it says, what is my intention? So as I went through this a long time ago, I read through this book, and it was a great and powerful tool for me because I used to do a lot of knee-jerk reactions, unfortunately. Um, and I realized that I needed to come up with a process in order for me not to provide knee-jerk reactions. And that process was simple. After I read the book, I decided that I'm going to start active listening more. And my first thought that comes through my head when somebody says something that I perceived as unprofessional or snide comment, I'm gonna throw it out because that is my knee-jerk reaction, and that's my I want to say something back to you. And then my second thought that comes in my head, I'm gonna throw that one out too because that one is me probably trying to seek revenge for that snide comment by poking my finger back at them. But that third thought that comes in my head, that's probably the one I'm going to go with because that's the one where my intention is to get to productivity. And when you go through that in your head or when you think through, if you come up with your own process that just happens to be mine, that's how I get that fight or flight response that we talked about earlier, where my tunnel vision comes in and my logical brain just shuts off and I just want to provide a comment back. That's how I get myself to calm down and go backwards to make sure that I am not going to say something that I may later regret. This provides self-control for me. And the moment of choice, again, a moment of choice is a moment of truth. It is the testing point of our character and competence. So if you want to take a few minutes and about 2 minutes, you want to reflect back perhaps on a time where you may have responded poorly to stimulus. How did you respond? What was your intention with the response you demonstrated? Consider what behaviors would have been more appropriate to use in this situation. Again, you don't have to share that. Just something I want you to think through while we're sitting here today. If you want to share, you're more than welcome to, but you don't have to. But we're going to take about a minute and a half now. I do like that in the chat for your moment of choice is breathe, listen, focus, wait to respond. I like that. I agree. Practicing the pause is important. Somebody said go take a nap, and you know that there's some science behind that. That if you take a nap, you'll feel better when you wake up, and that you'll feel more rested, and you'll be able to actually get back to productivity. Well, thank you everybody for sharing. So feel free to throw this in the chat if you want to. We're going to go ahead and do. Oh, we have a poll coming up. Sorry about that. So feel free to use the poll. Journaling and asking for feedback are helpful ways to build self-awareness. So is it true or false? And of course, that is true. The moment of choice happens after you respond to stimulus. True or false? Of course, that is false. The moment of choice happens in between stimulus and response. What is social awareness? We've come to a, this is, for social awareness is sort of what you might call social smarts, where we recognize and understand the emotions and needs of others. How can we recognize the emotional needs of a person? 90% of communication is nonverbal. So this is one of the things that we can look at somebody and we can look at them and tell if they're listening, or you can, if they have their arms crossed sitting in the back of a meeting and they're looking off and they're not even paying attention to anything that's happening, or if their body language is more standoffish, and you can see that when you're interacting with them, or when you're in a virtual environment and you're listening to somebody's audio, you can hear the pace of their voice, the tone of their voice to determine what they're actually saying. So that's some of the things that happen a lot. And one of the ways that I used to do this when I was younger, and I have four other siblings, and we used to argue with each other like siblings do. And my mom would say, apologize to your brother, and I would say, I'm sorry. That's the nonverbal. That's me. That's not me really being sorry. If I would have took a step back, and now I understand that when I need to say I'm sorry, I need to take a step back and think to myself and really center myself and go, I'm sorry for what I've caused to you. And that is one of the ways that we can sort of figure that out, is if we're truly sorry or not. We need to sort of center ourselves and take a breath, like somebody said earlier, or go take a nap. We're going to head to the next one, which is next self-assessment. And feel free to take 2 minutes and fill this out. And feel free to share any realizations that you have in the chat. Thank you very much for sharing. One of the ways that we can improve our social awareness or our empathies, we can talk to others and ask them and reflect on if we have that, and talk to our mentors, talk to our supervisor, talk to our coworkers. You can also watch TV with the sound off to get those nonverbals in, then turn the sound back on to see if you were correct. And of course, you can always um, when planning, think beyond the impact of your actions, impact of others, think about other people. And that will help you also apply that empathy that is so needed when we're interacting with others. Relationship management. Socially aware individuals have their finger on the pulse of those they interact with and consider other other perspectives. And I'll go back to that relationship management. I'll go back to that grocery store when I'm walking through and Scotty Taggart's sitting there and he says, "I work with you." That's him developing that a relationship between us. That's him creating this strong relationship. And one of the other things too that I've seen throughout my career is as far as people creating strong relationships is they say hi to everybody. They smile. They remember names and details. They try taking conversations to a deeper level. And if you make a promise, they make sure that they deliver on it. They also look for opportunities to collaborate. One of the things that I would like to highlight here too, as well is remembering names and details. There's another unique feature in our phones that when you put somebody's name in there, you can go to the notes section. You could put in details about that person. I know a lot of us have. I have problems remembering my family, my close family birthdays. So I have to write stuff down. I have to put it in a calendar. But if I put it in a calendar underneath Jerry, if you have Jerry, my phone number, and right underneath there, put a note, put like Jerry, wife, 3 kids, and then you can put that right down there. And that is a perfect way of remembering names. It's a perfect way of remembering people's kids. It's a perfect way of remembering anybody who wants to share any type of birthdays with you or anything that's important to them. They'll share it. You can put it in that note section. And that is a great way of when that person calls you or when you're thinking about it's like, I can't remember when their birthday is. You just pull up the note section and just review that. Going to back to another self-assessment. We're going to take about 2 minutes to fill this out. Again, if you have any realizations, please feel free to share those into the chat. I have about a minute left. And again, for relationship management to take those conversations to a deeper understanding, a deeper meaning, it's always great to learn from somebody who may have a different skill from you, and you can always say, "Teach me," and that way you can learn a little bit about them, and they can learn a little bit about you as you learn whatever skill they have that you may not have, and it's a great way of practicing your active listening skills and listening to understand rather than listening to respond. Thank you everybody for sharing in the chat. Now on to another knowledge check. So, showing empathy is an example of self-awareness or social awareness. The answer is social awareness. True or false? Keeping your promises, smiling, saying hello, and remembering names and details are good ways to improve relationship management. Thank you for all responding. The correct answer is true. EI in a virtual environment. Technology was designed to make us more efficient and by more connected with other people. However, though, it has not made us more connected with other people. The technology has made some other things that are important for us. For example, um, tone, context, emotional intent of a message is not well translated when you interact with people through email or through instant messenger. One of the examples that we have here today is we have Sandy, who was really looking forward to her day off to attend her family reunion. She had not attended it in several years and had been planning to take off for quite a while. Today, she got an email from her immediate supervisor stating that there's a business crisis and all requested vacation time will be deferred to the following month. So with that, Sandy did not think through her first initial response, and like she didn't do what I talked about earlier with Stephen Covey's moment of choice, and she went with her first response and fired off an email. Elaine, I cannot believe that you would cancel my vacation. You know my trip has been planned for months. We need to talk with a lot of exclamation points. As you can imagine, this probably would not go over well if you fired off that first knee-jerk reaction and you decided just to go with the first thought that came in your head. If you didn't pause, if you didn't take a break, the more when you do pause and when you do take a break and you realize what's the intent of this message. I want to be able to take leave. That's what I want to do. I want to attend my family reunion, my family vacation. I got your message about the business crisis and the need to cancel all vacations. I'm disappointed to hear, as you know, I have a vacation that has been planned and approved for months. Would you be available so that we can discuss options? This is a lot better of a message as we want to get to the end, to the product, to what we need. And this isn't going after the person. This is a very EI message. So now, as we can see today, we've applied concepts and models of emotional intelligence to interact with others, and the model of positive behaviors to enhance team members' ability and promote team effectiveness. And one of the things I would say here is before we end is again find that person that you admire, and that person with those great people skills and start learning from them. Find your own Scotty Taggart out there, that you can start learning from, and remember not to give that knee jerk reaction. The moment of choice is where you're most powerful at. That's where you want to be at, that moment of choice. And when you're there and you think to yourself, let me pause, let me take a breath, let me think through what I'm going to say before I say it. Let me go with my third thought. Those that's where you want to be at. And that's what really is something to start your EI journey. To continue strengthening your EI, you can create a development plan, get insight from a coach or mentor. And I'm going to add something here. Find a friend that you have that you think has great people skills. Talk to your spouse about it. Talk to many people as you can, because the more people you talk to and the more you start building your emotional vocabulary and the more you start recognizing yourself, the better you'll get at this. Do we have any questions? Also, while we're typing in the questions, I'm gonna put a plug in here for the um, Elevate and Empower series. We're gonna have some more series on emotional intelligence, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna present some of those in the upcoming months. So if you that's part of your development plan, please attend those, and we'll discuss more of these elements in depth. if there's no questions, that will conclude my portion of this briefing.
All right. Thank you so much, Jerry. Thank you for that insightful presentation. We appreciate that overview of emotional intelligence. And as Jerry mentioned, we will have a deep dive in upcoming sessions on all four of those areas. Our next event will be specifically on self-awareness. So be on the lookout for that announcement. We would love for you to attend these and all of the EI events and other emotional or elevate and empower events that interest you. So those flyers will be forthcoming. We would love your feedback on the content today. I have placed a link in the chat for you to give us that feedback. It's a less than a 1-minute survey, so any feedback you can offer us is greatly appreciated. And we really are so grateful to have your time today. And thank you again to Mr. Jerry Britt for the overview. And that concludes our event today. Please reach out if you have any further questions, and have a lovely day.